Hi, Greg.
Hello, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good, very good.
I'm here with Greg Tate. Greg, prior to exploring the intersection of AI and architectural design, Greg was an associate principal and technical director at Bauer Architects. With over 3 decades of experience, Tate has overseen the design and construction of multiple award-winning projects, including the renovated Festival of Arts Pageant of the Masters in Laguna Beach. Today, Greg develops architectural concepts with AI tools like Midjourney that merge reality and imagination, offering new perspectives on how we experience the built environment. He draws inspiration from the eclectic landscape of Los Angeles, incorporating unconventional and playful juxtapositions of architecture that blur the line between art and functionality. His design work has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Dwell, Metropolis, and HD television. Most recently, his AI work has been exhibited at Mobile Detroit's 2050 Constructing Futures at LTU, and recently featured in Parametric Architecture Open Prompters AI Architects magazine, Creative magazine. Is it create? It is creative, right? Magazine.
Just emphasize the A and the I.
Oh, okay. Creative magazine and Wow World magazine. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be
this. Thanks. So Greg and I went to school. I don't know whether we went to school together. He was a year ahead of me, and I don't know whether he remembers that or not. But
I remember going to school.
Pardon me?
I remember going to Cal Poly, Pomona. That was great.
That's always good. Yeah, we always want to remember that we went to school. How can we forget it, right? So, Greg, you're really involved in AI, and I wanted to have you on because I really like all the images that you have, and they're kind of playful and they're really beautiful. Not so much like a lot of these things, like people will put a prompt in and it'll just be a house that they're working on or something like that. And your images are kind of like these, like kind of fanciful things, and they're just, I mean, they're somewhat romantic in a lot of ways because you actually include people in your images where a lot
That's
of people.
From my dad.
Really?
My dad has passed away, but he was a photographer. And back in the day when I was going to school, he'd look at all the photography of the architecture. He goes, where are all the people? Since he was a photographer, he used to shoot schools and buildings and gas stations, car washes. He always wanted to make sure your car and people in there for scale.
Yeah.
So the same applies. Even if it's a freeway, it still needs a person to, anchor it, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. And so I was looking at those freeway images of that, like of the couple that's underneath the freeway, overpass. And I just think that they're very sweet, or any of the image that you did for Valentine's Day.
Yes.
With the woman's head.
Yeah.
And the city of LA in the background and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The curves of the freeways were reminiscent, kind of feminine, if you will. And I tried to merge those two into, what you saw.
Yeah. And then also including, I guess we could say biophilic design, but landscape basically, right? So there's a lot of landscape in your, there's a lot of green in there, and
I do try to play off the Southern California area and the freeways and amusement parks and, riverbeds and lowrider culture. So all of that gets into the mix there to try to understand who we are, where we live. And AI's, and in particular, Midjourney and the image generation is great because, if you're trying to produce a digital image, you have to really commit to it. A lot of precision to close corners and such. And that takes a lot of time, and probably not everybody can spend the time doing that, where Midjourney allows you that imagination and, if you will, democratizes some of those skill sets, because the renders our industry standard renders that come out in, moments, seconds sometimes. And so it's really fascinating. It augments one's creativity, I think, and becomes like a partner, like this great assistant that you throw a few ideas at, and then after lunch he comes back with the things you see. Right.
And then are you altering that then? Are you altering those images? You
Not
go back
much.
in and alter them?
Not
No?
much. In
Okay.
fact, I treat it like some people do. Some people really get it and really, tight. I don't mind the outputs that I get with the text I use. In a way, I sort of think of it like the Dadaists back in the 100 years ago, were picking stuff off the urinal or machine parts.
Yeah.
Just taking what they were given. And I've often thought architects are like that. We often take things and assemble them, not dissimilar from, maybe a Rauschenberg or some others. And we put those things together and kind of live with them. And so I kind of live with what I get. I do drive it though. Words and, some other things help drive the image to what I'm thinking in my mind.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you don't get there. Oftentimes, you'll spend some time and cannot get what you're thinking. So it's, real, again, it just augments your creativity in a way I had no idea was out there until something on. I mean, it had been there. I started about 2 years ago with it. It's actually be 3 years this March. So.
And then do you have an idea in your mind of what, and then from those images, you're inputting those words into the.
I do have an idea. And I noticed those continue to develop. Like at first I was doing freeway housing. And I started just riffing off the freeways more because I just remember them as a kid. I drove a lot on them, commuted to school on them a lot. And they just were such a substantial element in the urban landscape. They divided neighborhoods. Neighborhoods were planned around them. So they've always sort of had some interest in me. And then to turn them into a pool, like freeway pools, for example, was like, hey, I wonder what that would look like. I wonder if I was to merge the freeway and buildings, could I get freeway buildings out of it? And so it sort of starts like that. Sometimes it's commentary. There's one on there now, Gulf of America, where I turn an aircraft carrier into a carnival amusement park.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that image, right? Yeah. That one, and then what's the other one? Yeah, the aircraft carriers, I think. Yeah.
Well, in a way, I think of it. If there's a narrative to architecture, or in this particular case, I think of this as where the architecture is both the protagonist and the antagonist. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes not so much. And coming from the 70s, growing up in that sort of anti-establishment sort of mentality, I like to poke AI in the eye. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to start messing around with it, because I wanted to get to know it before it got to know me. And so where could I push it? Because I saw a lot of people doing stuff that is very believable. Like, wow, is that real? Is that
yeah.
And I decided I didn't want to do that. I wanted to walk a fine line, if you will. Again, back to the surrealists and such, to render it hyper realism for these, sort of almost dreamlike imagery. And so some of that in there, some art history, I suppose.
But it'd be like super studio. I mean, I was like super studio things, but it's actually in reality, instead of just a drawing of it, there's actually a rendering of it. And so I think that's, it's like, and I mean, I've like seen other things that you've designed, and I guess I'd like to say like, that you're a designer that can also use AI to his benefit, not that you have to use AI in order to design something that you already, And I think that really shows, because you're kind of pushing those boundaries that I think that like a typical person, if they're going to put that input in, they're not going to get the same out as you are.
Yeah, I would hope so. I really do try to strive to be a little different. I see a lot of imagery on Instagram and it's really proliferated. And so when I'm working in Midjourney and in AI, I'm kind of working through an idea. Something will pop up and it'll be like, oh, I've not seen that before. And it has some logic, if you will, some logic to it. I do see it through the eyes of the lens of the architect. So, I'm looking for stuff that make it convincing. I'm looking for a column. I'm not looking for an 80-foot cantilever unless that's part of the idea. So I do try to ground it in some reality. Although when you look at it, like you say, it just walks a fine line, I guess.
Yeah.
And I've always done that. Even back in Cal Poly, as we were wrapping up, fourth, fifth year, I started doing furniture and lighting. And again, back to picking stuff off the construction site and reassembling things, or walking down the aisle of the hardware store and reassembling things. This now, it's in a way I'm able to walk down the street and put buildings together in the same way. It feels similarly in putting stuff together that may not be related. Maybe a complementary pairing of opposites, if you will. And that's sort of where it comes from. The ideas.
And I mean, of course, like all of it, right? Like we've all designed something, and then we're thinking about we're driving somewhere where we typically go and I'm like, oh my God, there's that element. Like I probably saw it every day and it was in my head, and then I put it in this project, right? Where it was where you're kind of like thinking, okay, I where did that ever come from? And then you're like, oh, it was right down the street or something, right? It was
I think Picasso says, I probably will mangle this, but good artists copy, great artists steal. So I don't think anything's new. I do think though, in this AI though, it does give you some imagery that you might not have thought about. And I think that's the interesting part. It doesn't think like you. It is not just your own experiences. If we have our own data sets, if you will, I'm going to call experiences our data sets. So what the Midjourney and the AI machines do, they go out and they, it's like 10,000 data sets, if you will, or 10,000 architects' experiences coming back to you. So it's all that experience being brought back into your thing, which is really powerful. And there's some things I just would not have thought about. And they are. And I hope, let me go chase that rabbit hole. And for me, there's a lot of that. That's the fun in it, and trying to uncover that.
Okay, so what are your first recollections of architecture?
Okay, so back to my dad, who was a photographer in LA, the 50s and 60s and 70s. And during the summers, I'd hang out with him and go to, at the time, he was shooting car washes and gas stations. And so I was maybe 6, 7, I carry his camera equipment around. And I vividly remember those, those old car washes with the structure that would, be against the always blue sky and the shiny Impalas, coming out, getting wiped off. And so I recall really specifically steel structures and stack bond or, precision block.
Yeah. Those repeated elements.
Glass, the full height glass. So in a way, it's real modernism and thinking about it. If case study houses were 10 or 15 years earlier at that point, these really were blurring the indoor outdoor, particularly the car washes. And you can see now, some years later in architecture school, it comes back to you. You're like, I remember all this from my dad's photos, right? And so really it was that. And then by the time I get back into architecture school, there's the case study homes, and immediately it connects back. So that was my first real experience.
Well, I kind of laugh because At Cal Poly, we would have like Rafael Soriano used to come to our school and walk around, and we used to be like, who is this guy with the beret? Who is this little old guy with the beret? Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, we like didn't know what he did. I mean, Bernard maybe would say, oh, he's this, he did this. And we're like, yeah, whatever. He would come in and make comments about like that he didn't like about somebody's project, nothing was ever modern enough for him or anything. And I mean, it was really great. And I think Craig Elwood, didn't Craig Elwood used to come to the school also?
I think so.
I think he did. And again, they would just be like walking through the school and walking into a crit of like walking there. And, and it was, and now we're reading about all of these people, or I mean, now, of course, mid-century modern, it's like in the case study houses are kind of, oh, it's trendy. It's like trendy now to like know all, see what the, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, those are people that that used to come into our school. Right. So.
Yeah. Bernard, back to Bernard real fast. He was a great guy. I'm sure any Cal Poly people listening will go, God, that guy was so strange. And he'd come into the middle of a lecture and sit right in the front row and eat an apple, and the apple's going every which way. And but he was great. He got us into homes. I think you might have mentioned that. He took us to like Neutra homes or Schindler homes, would drive up 10 of us and knock on a door and ask if we could all come in and look around. And people would be like, sure, come on in. I couldn't imagine doing that now.
I did. I can remember in fifth year because Alan Forrest was the head of the department, and we actually went with Sam Hall Kaplan. Sam Hall Kaplan.
Yeah.
He took our thesis class. So he took our thesis class. It was only like eight of us or something like that. And we went in a van around to what Sam Hall Kaplan thought were his like greatest buildings in LA. And so it was like Alan Forrest. And we went to see the Ennis Brown house, and Gus Brown took us around the house.
That's nice.
Yeah. So we were like walking around inside of it, and and it's like I have like 2 photographs that I have like hanging on my wall, and then people are like, oh, and I said, oh, it's the Ennis Brown house. It's like, yeah. So it was great to, right? I mean, it's, you're like, oh, I lived in LA in the 90s, or I lived, but I mean, I think that like it was a great time to kind of be there for, for like the 90s also. And
because PDC had their design week back then. It would go for 7 days. I mean, they had all kinds of people and speakers, and Bernard did another great thing. He got me a job at Peter Shire's office. Peter was just finished a few years earlier, or that couple years, Olympics with Sussman Frazier. He'd done a lot of the wayfinding graphics and such. And that, at the time, I think Bernard did that because I was making some furniture. And that was terrific because Peter's really into the mechanics of the screws. And, it was just such a great experience. And then that helped my career, actually. Did a lot of that furniture and lighting right out of school.
Didn't you go to West Week and with your lighting and be out on the front step or something like that?
Well,
did you do that?
No, what I did something like this.
Okay.
So back in the day, there was no email or anything. You had the hard copy mail slides, transparencies, right?
Uh-huh.
And the color copier had just come out. And so you could run color copies and have like something really fast. And it was kind of rough looking and, had certain kind of feel to it, vibe to it. And so there's a writer with House and Garden magazine, and Philippe Strock and a couple others were up there, and she's doing a panel. And after everybody left, I had my portfolio. I walked with my furniture and stuff, and I walked up to her and I introduced myself and said, do you guys look at new people, new artists? And she looked at it right there and said, could you send me some slides for this? And we're doing a piece on Southern California, furniture and lighting designers. And I was like, sure. So boy, sent it. And then they sent people out from House and Garden. They did a photo shoot, the whole shebang. And that really took off because I think I figured out that the press needs content. And so they're always looking for just a story. And once I had that one story, I was able to go around and use that for credibility and, the galleries, et cetera, et cetera. Other articles came as a result of exhibitions and some other things. So really, it took off from there. And again, it was just pulling stuff, from the construction site, a la Gary. I mean, I can't say that was that aesthetic wasn't at that time, right? The exposed wood studs, the heating duct lamps and things like that. So that was part of the visual culture at the time. And it got people a little, not pissed, but, a little unsure about what to make of it. And that's what I liked about it. And it elicited an emotion, whether it was positive or negative. It made you think. That's what I was trying to do.
We had two lamps that Steve had made out of these like concrete tube. There were some type of concrete tube. What?
Steve Dangermont.
No, Steve O'Leary.
Oh,
my late ex-husband.
Sorry.
I mean, we knew Steve did, but yeah, he didn't do that. No. So it was like the concrete tubes, and then he had the diffusers from inside of those real big lights, and so and then he had the whole thing together, and we had them on our nightstands. But during the '94 earthquake, like one of them just fell. Like the other one I think fell on the bed. I mean, we were up out of the bed in the doorway, but one of them fell onto the bed. The other one just like went, fell, and it was just like, smashed, and like the diffuser just like flew everywhere. Yeah.
That's the thing about functional art. It can be delicate. Even though it's made of concrete, it's
So what did your mom do?
My mom she worked for a transportation company in accounts receivable, really a normal 9 to 5. She was a teamster. And I tell you, she allowed my dad really to pursue his artistic sort of endeavors and, let him photograph and let him do his thing. She was really supportive. And I think as parents, they were both very supportive about being creative or an outlet for my energy, I guess, from their eyes a little bit. But, they were always really encouraging to do what you love and, follow your heart sort of a thing, and allowed me that freedom to do that. And,
and you grew up at the beach, right? Did you grow up at the beach?
No, I grew up in Southgate, which was a Southeast LA. Yeah, hot rodders back in the day, surfers back in the day. So it was fun. I lived by Southgate Park, which is a big old park. And and then my dad was a photographer his whole life and eventually retired and started doing woodworking at Cerritos College.
Did like teach it or just actually do it?
He just did it.
Yeah.
He just liked working with his hands, and he was sort of done with photography. Been 30 years. So so my mom was the glue and kept us going. She was ahead of her time then.
What 3 classic buildings do you like and why?
Okay, so I picked houses that resonated with me for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they're houses that were basically from architecture that still maybe informed me in thinking and such. And the first one was Gary's residence. At Santa Monica. And that was, I look at some notes here, 1978. He was 49 years old at the time. So I'm going to give ages of the architects when they did these projects.
No, that's great, because when he did the parking structures, he was 55, right?
Yeah, he did some stuff. He did really straightforward modernist stuff. I think the Santa Monica parking structure is one of the first with chain link. where he used
Yeah. And
it.
that always gives me hope, right? I always tell people like, Gary he didn't do the parking structures until until he was 55. And then he was like,
Yeah,
I want to do what I want to do at this point, So
it
yeah.
was a big risk for
Yeah.
him, I would imagine, to do that at the time, to shun or turn away from clients who didn't want that, let's say.
Hmm.
But what that did for me, what I saw in that was that architecture could be anything. It could it could be asphalt kitchen floor. It could be exposed steel studs. It could be a metal wrap. It could be anything. And with it, a position uh, that that derived what he did. It wasn't just, I'm just gonna, you know, just do this. It was, he
Hmm.
was interested in seeing the thing frame, the unframed building, that's it. Stick a window on it. He was interested in this idea that, why is this such an objectionable house from his neighbors when you have chain link on your yards, when you have metal on your campers? What difference does it make? And then we had some instructors at the time. This was a bit second year. Mark Dillon, who was at Gary's, who they would take us on field trips to some of Gary's houses.
Hmm.
Uh, and remember seeing one of the first ones where he was breaking apart the program, um, into distinct elements. And that was
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
Because architecture was so provincial back then. Even the East
Yeah.
guys, Robert Stern or Stanley Tigerman. I mean, those guys were doing sort of, they were doing interesting stuff, but it was, it had an East Coast sensibility. This was
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
outdoors,
Yeah.
great climate, thin construction.
Hmm.
Um, and so at that time, it was aligning itself with a lot of the LA artists at that time in the 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
like a Billy Al Pinkston or, perhaps a Rauschenberg, Klaus Oldenburg. And those guys resonated with me, again, back to this Dadaist approach where architects take stuff right off the shelf and that's it, it's done. So all that really sank, and I could see it made some people uncomfortable. So I liked it all the way around. It sort of fit my thinking at the time. And then the second house would be Corbu's Villa Savoy
Okay.
in France. He was 44 at the time he did that. And I'd been to that. I'd seen that, gone to that house. And, it was just revolutionary. Not only could you have the shapes, but again, driven by the quality of light, again, a position once taken that informs the design, but it wasn't Gary's slapdash. It was a little more refined element, machine for living.
Hmm.
Uh, and this sort of power limits that all this is set up on a golden section, the modular thing, that you could um, have this enormous amount of freedom, even though you're limited or constrained. And so that was always a challenge, for me. How do we get there when we don't have everything we need, and how can Corbu just seemed to answer that in some ways because you were doing bigger spaces, more assembly spaces. And so that just really resonated with me, the Savoy House. And then if you've been there, I don't know if you've been there, but if you walk through it, it's like people they lived a little differently back then. Things aren't quite like ours. Things, the planning is a little bit different.
I haven't been to Villa Savoy. Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
it's interesting progression through, and the moments, there's a lot of moments, in that space, really composed and compositions. That's a big, it's an interesting thing for me at the time.
I think the only Le Corbu project that I've seen was the housing in Berlin, I think.
Hmm.
I think that's the only, yeah, that's the
Yeah,
only one.
that was based on the unit de habitation in Marseille.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. So that's so I was there. Yeah, yeah. So I was, yeah, yeah.
So
that
I
one.
had a good story
Yeah.
about that. So I'm down at the foot of, at Marseille, looking up at this habitation. And, I got a little camera on my neck or whatever. And a young guy walks by, and I finally learned to just talk to young people because they wanted to practice their English. The old people were just turning, but they didn't want to talk. The young people were like, yeah. And I told him what I was doing. He goes, you want to come up and check it out?
Oh, so he lived there.
Yeah, he lived there. So up we go. He takes me to his place, shows me, you could see the section, that famous section. We went up to the rooftop pool area and everything. Oh, it was terrific. Yeah. And but anyway, that was so Corbu had occupied a lot. In fact, when I graduated in '87 at Cal Poly, that summer I went to France for the 100th anniversary of Corbu. And they had opened up a bunch of buildings, renovated a bunch of buildings. The Savoy was renovated. So they had all these structures of his open. And so that's why I've gone there and done that. And then that's how I got a roof.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was there right around this time because I was in Denmark from late August of '86 till mid June of '87. So it was right around the same time. And then I think we had gone to Berlin maybe in the probably in the spring, I think, of '87.
Did you go for school or for personal travel?
I was over in Denmark for a year. Yeah, it was for school. It was for school with Cal Poly. Yeah.
How did you like that, the school abroad?
Oh my gosh. You know what? It's like I was just thinking about it today because of all of this thing, all the stuff that's going on in the world. I think every person should go live abroad for a year. I think everybody should. I think that it just gives you such a better insight into the world, into other people, into other nations. I think it gives, it's like, and it doesn't, I don't feel like I was less of an American because I lived abroad for a year, and I mean, we live with Danish families, right? So it's like we hear everything, we hear everything, and it's like, you realize that America, it's like Americans think that everybody love them, and they don't. But it's like the opposite is true most of the time. But and then just being able to speak to people about politics on the train, and that you're. I mean, just it just gives you better insight and I can remember one time, and because we're in Denmark, they're very much about, and I love Denmark, but it's very much about, especially at that time, it was very much about following the rules. It's they're social democrats. There's like certain rules that you're supposed to follow. And I had gotten a bus pass every month, right? Like I was supposed to. But the last month that I was there, I didn't want to pay for it. Right? Because I was only going to be there for a couple of weeks. So I just said,
and they would walk around and ask for your ticket back then or not. It wasn't a turnstile thing or anything. Yeah.
Yes. And so you would have to, it's like this, you had your clip court and you'd have to put it in when you got on the bus, you'd have to put it in there, or on the train, you have to put it in, and then, it clipped, it clipped to acknowledge those, and then you would go sit down. But they would have, the police, just like the same way that they have, police on the metro and everything, that would come on. And what they would do is, it's like they would jump on at the last possible second. So you couldn't get off. You couldn't get off. You couldn't go buy a ticket or whatever. And then you're like, oh no. And then they would go through and ask everybody, just look at us here on public transportation. They would ask you for your clip court. And so I just handed him my expired pass.
Did they
and of course he spoke to me in Danish, and then I just pretended like I didn't understand him, and I knew exactly what he was saying, but I didn't say anything. And then he was finally like, okay, like you're gonna. So he basically wrote me a ticket, right? And I just figured like, okay. So anyway, the ticket came in the mail. And I like came home one day, and my Danish father, we call him like my Danish father, my Danish mother, my Danish sister, and he's like, oh, you got a ticket, you have to pay the ticket. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay the ticket. And he goes, you have to pay the ticket. And I'm like, I'm like, I'm only going to be here for 2 more weeks. I'm not going to pay the ticket. I don't have the money. I'm not going to pay the ticket. I'm going to go traveling. And he goes, oh, yes, because you're an American, you're just going to leave the country without paying your ticket.
So is Interpol still after you for that?
So when I went there 10 years ago, my daughter was studying in Spain and I was there, and then I had to like check in. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder if they're gonna pull it up when I'm like checking in, they're checking my passport, and they're gonna bring up like, okay, hold on a second, you owe this like over how many years, right? By that time it would have been like 20 or 30 years. So that's like that's what I think. But I do think that everybody, I do think that everybody should live in a foreign country. I don't care what foreign country you're in. I think that you should go live in a foreign country for a year or at least spend some time in another country just to kind of understand, things and learn more. Yeah.
Funny you say that about trains and living in other countries. So when I was there, I was in a train car with about 5 people, and they all spoke different language, German, Spanish, French, but they all communicated in broken English.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating because it was like, yeah, I can understand all of them right now. But I think that's something that at the time they were, wanting to practice their English. That was
yes. Yeah. 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 And I was just speaking, I went to DWR reception last night about one of the people in town. They were talking about chairs. I'm going to be interviewing him and probably a couple, because he also is an author and a realtor and stuff. But one of the people that was working there, her parents were born in Denmark. She was born in Denmark, but she came here at 5 years of age or whatever. And then she actually went and lived there for maybe 3 years or something like a few years ago. And now she's back here, so she spent most of her time in the States and stuff. But we were kind of talking about how at the time when we were American students there, everybody wanted to know American English, right? And not British English. And so our Danish language teachers would correct our English a lot. They would correct our English with this British English. And then I guess the students that had American students at their house, they were told at school that they weren't speaking. They're like, oh, we can tell you have an American student in the house because, you're speaking like this slang American English instead of proper British English. And now, of course, many languages have adopted, like they have their own slang. Like now Danish apparently it's not like proper Danish the way it used to be. It's more like the slang Danish. And so my Danish sister that moved to Ireland, her Danish is, she says like, oh yeah, they laugh at me because my Danish is like this proper, it's gamla dansk, it's old Danish. And she's not teaching, she's not speaking like the young slang like everybody else does.
Yeah, they probably look at her like, where'd you learn that? What? Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the third house?
Okay. So the third house is Ando's Azuma row house in Japan. And, in a way that really ties them all together because you had, I think, the simplicity of a Corbu, the expressiveness of a Gary, not as taking it directly, but that shapes then became a manifold for light, if you will, or the way a window placement was against a wall, so light came in. And those were the architecture was almost a piece of sculpture. It was almost so pure and so pristine that it was something that it was hard to be simple. That's what I figured that out. I was like, it's dang hard to be simple. And I still think that to this day, to hide, mullions, to hide connections, to really get a pristine level of, real pureness. And I thought Ando was the guy for that, for me. And the scale of the houses were, I'm sort of maybe a small scale-ish person, mid-scale person. And I'm not so big on the towers or the sprawling master plans, so kind of the object itself. And so that sort of wrapped it up. I thought, if I can hit Ando if I can get to that level of detailing and spatial shaping and the way light comes in, then I will felt I succeeded. You know, and again, that's hard to get to. When you look at my built work, a lot of it is, pretty exuberant. It's not just pristine. But I do try to hide details. I don't try to not stuff touch sometimes just to avoid a detail when stuff touches. And
Yeah.
so, still kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be the three. They're relatively modest. They changed people's thinking in many ways. They were seminal works for mid-career architects. And so those are the three. There's other buildings, Renzo or Lucan and others out there. There's also my favorites, but I think these three resonate.
Yeah, no, it's good. Well, we spent a lot of time. My son was in the pageant of the masters, so we spent some time at your space for 2 summers actually, because it was this past summer and then the summer before. And I'm assuming, right, like you did the new part of it, right? And so they had kind of this existing theater already in some of the existing theater buildings. Yeah.
They have, what it was okay. So originally the Pageant of the Masters, they had a show there every year, went back to the 60s, I believe, and they wanted to add an art exhibit component to keep people there for something else to do until the show started. Mm-hmm. And so they started the Festival of Arts and Pageant of the Masters. And so it's basically the pageant is over there in what they call the Irvine Bowl, and it's stage house and it's back of house. That's sort of one element. And then the grounds that Jay Bauer, I do with Jay Bauer, that really encompasses a number of parcels that were pulled together. And then we redid the facade, which was they kind of done as a stage set. If you go down to the Sawdust Festival, people who know that part of, El Toro Road there, or what is that, Laguna Canyon Road? Anyway, they're like stage sets. Some of those sets because they're seasoned, and I think they built this simply and cheaply, and through the years it was kind of falling apart. So they came to Jay and said, "We want you to, help us reimagine this." And the problem they had, or an issue they had, was the grade change from the front to the Laguna Canyon Road to the back end, to the pageant, which is about a 10 incline up. Yeah. So what they did, the landscape architects and Jay and everybody, they had the idea to elongate the path so we could get in the slope, right? Okay. Organize the galleries around that path. And so that takes on a leaf shape. And through retaining walls, it became seats, and the boundaries of the, galleries. That's sort of what we did there. And
it's all accessible. It's all accessible, but you don't even realize it. I think that's the neat. Until you're explaining it right now, I'm it is all you don't even realize that there is that grade change.
No, you don't. And in between there are the performance areas where they have the stage. Mm-hmm. The thing too that was interesting about that project was the time it took to construct it. So we had to do it in 9 months between when they closed the pageant in September. We started in October and did ribbon cutting on July 4th or 5th. So it took it down to dirt and brought it back up. The Turner construction was incredible. That's such a great project in terms of collaboration of city staff, council, other vendors, our earth wall guy, the perforated metal panel guys. It took a lot to orchestrate that, but they were all there. It was to get done, to not open would have been, it's because we came down to the finish line where we had some issues in the performance area and they were going to fence it all off for the main opening. You get 200 or 300 people down there, and they would have just been staring through the fence at it. So yeah, so they were able to get it all cleaned up. They had, again, great concrete guys. It was. I can't even imagine doing that now either.
I know. So did you do the restaurant then also?
No, that was done
Okay.
by, I think that was done by AO, which is a Tivoli restaurant, which at the time was a long-term lease from the previous owner, and their lease wasn't renewed, or they didn't renew it, whatever the case was. And a new operator needed to come in because they had booked weddings and such. They do a lot of weddings back there. So they need somebody to operate. So you say your son was in the pageant?
Yes, he was in it last year and he was in it this past summer and the summer before. In fact,
Do they paint him up? Do they give him make him part of the painting? Is he in that? See.
Here he's this one. He's this one right here. And so this is like an actual photograph, but it looks like a painting.
I know.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And then he's this one.
That's pretty fun. All the backstage stuff. And,
they painted. He wore a bodysuit. They didn't actually paint him. He wore a bodysuit that was painted like that. And then this is this one. This was the one that he was in because he was part of the opening fashion scene. So he was supposed to be some Colombian rapper. I forget what the name of the Colombian rapper. I mean, we're not Colombian, but I mean, even his dad was half Nicaraguan, but Nicaraguans don't look like Colombians. But yeah, apparently they were super excited because they said that he looked like this rapper, and I was like, oh, I don't know who that rapper is. But he does have a couple different looks, and one of them looked like Griffin, and Griffin was in that, and then they took the So I mean, it was a good thing. It's all volunteer, and
it is right. I was just kidding.
There's like you can't take any photographs of anybody, right? You're not allowed to take any photographs of anybody because you're not going to put it out there. And then people were like, well, don't they have the Last Supper every single year? And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess everybody knows what the Last Supper looks like.
Yeah, there's a little magic to it because they keep it dark and you see some movement, and then next time they hit the house lights, it's boom, there it is.
Yeah.
But I'll plug these guys a little bit. There for anybody who has nothing to do during the summer, and during a week, go to the Festival of Arts. You don't have to go to the Pageant of the Masters, but there's a art show there.
Yes.
There's food, there's drink. I mean, it's great. There's places to sit, hang out. There's kids art. It's a cool night.
Yeah. I mean, the restaurant's a good restaurant. And then if you go to the pageant, then you have your ticket and you can come in like all through, you can still come into the art exhibit and all summer long. Yeah. 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 Which is yeah. And then he was on
parking. There's a bunch
he was on the committee. Yeah, he was on the committee, and then to pick paintings. So one of the paintings that he picked from the Timken is going to be in it, but he's not going to be. He doesn't want to be in it. It is a commitment for us to drive up from San Diego, but they do. He did really like it, and he's on the committee, so that's kind of good. So he won't have to be there. 1 week on, 1 week off, and everything. Yeah. No, it's good. I think everybody should go. I think everybody should go to Laguna Beach because I love Laguna Beach. It's easily one of my favorite beaches in California. Some people say, oh, it's crowded. I'm like, I don't know. It's more of like a European beach, like kind of like a European hill town, where,
It's not Huntington, just has a 500-yard long beach for a half a mile in each direction. No, there's nooks and crannies in Laguna. There's rooftop bars right there off PCH. I mean, it's a fun little place. I'm sure a lot of
people.
Anyways. Yeah, but nice town, great project. I love that project, and great client. They're all dedicated to the arts, and so it's a great client to have.
Yeah.
Very supportive.
Yeah. So what do you like about being an architect?
Uh, Building ideas,
Okay.
I would say, would be the thing. I kind of got that from UCLA in grad school. It was like, okay, at Cal Poly, they teach you everything. You come out, okay, you know it. Now in grad school, it was always like, now what does it mean to you?
Mhm.
You know, what did what does all that you just learned mean, and how do you build your ideas? And then going back to Corb and the others who their architecture were building ideas on light, space, and volume, scale. Uh, so I think that's the thing for me. And then the freedom and the creativity as an architect. I know when you're younger, you're in the office a lot, et cetera, et cetera. But as you get more seasoned and a little further along, you're on job sites, you're at meetings, you're just a little bit more independence. And then with the responsibility, you can make decisions and make the call, and all that's very satisfying, especially if you're trying to get something built. And a contractors, doesn't want to do it. So that really is.
I mean, it's strange, because we're getting older, and then the younger people, not like contractors. It used to be that I could learn a lot from these contractors that were like the same age as me or older, and now it's like I feel like some of these contractors, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I should be teaching you something. Like, can you? It's like, which is bizarre because, right, we're not supposed to be teaching them, or they'll like say, oh, and I'm
There's
like
no
saying,
incentive
okay,
for them. Yeah.
pardon me.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, what did you say? What did you say?
Oh, I was just going to say, there's no incentive for them to be savvy about it. It's better for them to make a change order out of it, or to say it wasn't clear and they didn't bid it that way, and that's not how this guy sees it. Which is maddening. Which is,
Yes, yeah,
one of my
yeah.
the thing that kind of gets me charged up the most is one of my least favorite things, which is construction. I love construction. I do not love arguing with these guys.
Exactly. Yes.
And it's just scope arguments too. It's not like, hey, you're a weirdo. It's like, dude, it's here in the spec. They're just pure scope arguments. I get there's some layout arguments. Drawings aren't clear. I get that. I get layout. But some of the other stuff, it's scoped in there. It's like, well, what did you guys even bid?
Yeah. Or even just like my thing is just like, oh, well, I don't understand. Like, oh, well, that has to be, just like these questions. And then I'll say like, okay, I'll get that for you. And then, well, da, 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 da. And I'm like, okay, I'll get that for you. I'm like, I said I'd get that for you. I said that. I told you that like
when are you going to get it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why didn't you ask it when you looked at the drawings? That's the time that you should have brought it up, not while you're about to build it, or it comes in like, oh, well, it's like, why didn't you bring it up as a question before? And then I said that this one project that I'm working on, I'm like, okay, because it is for a little nonprofit. And, I'm like saying, okay, we're going to meet and we're going to go over everything in the drawings. And I said, even though it's a tiny project and I've spent way more time on it than I should, and I said, but we're going to go over everything. And then the client said like, oh, well, why do we need to go? Because I'm going to make sure that everybody knows exactly what we're doing. Exactly. If there's any questions, then people can bring it up then. And then I'm not going to get a call. It's like, I won't get a call. I had to like, okay, I need to be told 24 hours in advance when there's going to be an inspection. Oh, well, but I'm like, well, I mean, you knew 24 hours in advance that there was going to be an inspection. So if you wanted me to be there, then you needed to tell me 24 hours. I can't just run over, it's 9:30 and then the window is 9 to 12. And I'm like, okay, yeah.
The best thing I saw, the best sign I ever saw was in a health department plan checker's office, was nice, prominently posted, your airport planning is not my emergency.
Yes.
So, it's like, all right, I get it. I got that.
Yeah. I know.
And we always tell them, like, guys, you have 7 days. If you got a problem, I need that RFI as soon as you understand it. But I got 7 days too to deal with that. You don't give me the question and just want it tomorrow. the
Yeah.
answer, even though I can give it to you, maybe, but
Yeah. Well, I thought it was more, yeah. And I thought it was more like just residential or whatever. I didn't even realize that, like, Steve did a lot of college buildings. So there were always RFIs, constant
saying low bid.
RFIs.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all low bid skies, and they have a pathway to change. And I get it. Their contracts are written that way. I get it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, of course, materials go up and down, but, it's like, okay, then let's all work together on it, right? It's collaboration. Let's work together. If there is something to change, then like, let's change it, but like, let's not reduce the window size by 50%.
yeah, Turner was for the festival was really good at that one. It was an interesting one is that we pre-qualified. We must have interviewed a half a dozen guys for that job, and then finally came to Turner, who was the most responsive at estimating. They had continuity of their staff. You didn't get dropped off the cliff, and now the construction guys come onto it and never heard one whiff of what he had been talking about for the past. So there's something to that, being able to pre-qual a guy and then, work together,
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
so there's no surprises. The owner appreciates it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for-
No,
Um,
definitely.
the other thing I think you'd asked about, about being an architect. I think the other thing is I tend to see the world through the lens of the architect. You know, would I have done it that way? Oh, that looks cool. Everything's sort of like, as the architect would look at it, you specify or you paint or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then like, again, maybe working with all the different specialists, the metal panel people, the earth wall guy, the superstructure guy on those canopies. Each of them had their own sort of particulars, and that was fun to
Mm-hmm.
to work with different people, helping see your thing through. And the level of expertise they brought from it. The metal guy that we used does almost everybody's stuff. Z.
Uh-huh.
But they work with Gary, they work with Herzog de Moron, and that's where we kind of discovered we could get dimpled and punched copper sheets from them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then, worked with them, and they were real precise. It was great. I mean, if you look at the detailing on there, it's pretty nice. They did a good job of fabricating and coordinating, and so that's the other part of it is seeing what you've thought, what you designed, and then seeing it in as a full size sample. So
Yeah.
that's fun.
I think it's interesting because there's just like some of the things that I don't know. I mean, I think I saw something new every single time that I was there, and then kind of like grasp the concept kind of more, that a lot of those places are really like a stage set, like the stage for the outdoor music.
Yeah.
Where you have like the backdrop, and then the backdrop is, it's like you can put whatever you want up there on that back screen, but then also you have like you have a screen up above the entrance into the amphitheater. There's that screen up there. So there are like these like subtle, and then there's kind of, and on the outside, it kind of becomes, as you drive by or whatever, you're kind of like, oh, okay, it kind of becomes the, it is the billboard for the, the function of the space. Yeah.
There's some signage pipes out there in front too, with lights on them. And then the earth wall's a little bit lower at the stage. So if you're driving by, you can kind of see, something's happening.
Yeah.
In there, it's not a walled off, art, exhibit.
Yeah.
It's for the people, right? It's for people driving by, walking by, so you can really see what's going on.
Yeah.
So that was on purpose, and it's 2 football fields long, by the way. It's 600 feet elevation, so it doesn't seem that big when you're there, but it's like, I'll be darned, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's so much. I mean, when things are broken up like that, you don't realize how large it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jay and Spurlock, landscape architects, Andy Spurlock, were
Oh,
really
uh-huh.
instrumental in that shaping the planning of it. And,
Yeah.
you know, the idea of elongating the path, and then we call it the leaf concept. There were several, through the design early, and that was one that stood out.
Hmm.
Everybody seemed to gravitate to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So all the little exhibit spaces and
Yeah, and they left it to the artists. The artists still build their little, their display booths,
yeah.
right? So we
Yeah.
had a display booth proposal to them and a signage proposal to them, wayfinding. They didn't do those two.
Oh, okay.
So they're
Okay.
still doing their booths. They're letting the artists build them still. And then some of the wayfinding they had to do, and they'll put up a big sign, drinks, or whatever. God
Wait,
bless
I
her.
mean, yeah,
God bless
yeah. Well, that does. I mean, that explains like something, right? I'm like always like, oh my gosh, like what about these wayfinding things? Like that's part of the thing, yeah,
I think once
there's
you're there
always
and once you
something
get
that
used
gets
to it,
cut in the budget, right? Like, oh, we
yeah,
can just do these ourselves. You
that
know, just-
and that's their ethos, by the way. A lot of stuff they've added since we've been out there, that it's like, where'd that come from? You know, isn't that surcharge in that canopy? Like what? So they've done that. That's been their thing. They're artists or makers, and they do that. So we tried to catch it all.
I know, yeah. Well, it's just I don't know, right? It's the client where you're like, oh my gosh, like, are you really going to put that furniture back in your house? Okay, I mean, it's your house, so it's like,
Yeah, yeah, I get it. No, but it looks good. I think they do a good job with it. I mean, it's fine.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
theirs.
yes. So, what would you like to say about the future of architecture?
I think it's in good hands. Uh, and as it relates maybe to AI, uh,
Mhm.
there are a lot of people and practitioners really advancing what's called the real time generation, where you can move a mouse and it's changing, um, and so I think there's a lot of promise there. Although there is no cheating architecture with AI, none.
Oh,
It's too many people, too many nuances. It's not going to pick out the screws, like we've got to do on stuff.
yeah.
It's not there yet. But where it is there is in conceptualizing and getting to yes fast with the client, uh, aesthetic alignment with the client, with
Hmm.
the cities and other stakeholders. Um, and I think too, for architects, I don't think there's a ton of legal implications about uh, you know trademarks and copyrights and things and intellectual property, um,
Hmm.
because these constitute you know uh, a transformative use, training a large language model like ChatGPT or Midjourney and such. Uh, Even though there's no court cases yet, those are transformative, taking the original and really changing it around. You can't
Hmm.
copyright style. Um, so you would have to, take Gary's Disney Hall and copy that exactly. And now you're in infringement, right? But who's going to do that? Who is going to do that?
Yeah, who's gonna do that, right? Yeah,
But what
and
I
get
am,
away with it,
yeah, and
right?
who would even do that? Anybody that has any sort of artistic integrity is not going to do that. They're going to do their own thing.
No. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess that they're right. There are some places in like like in China or something, where their things will be like built exactly the same way as like, or it's like smaller.
Good
Yeah.
luck. I'm sure that Gary's going, good luck. Call me when it's done. I'd like to see it. I think the photographers might have some issue because if the large language models are scraping Zaha Hadid work, they're scraping photos of them. And it doesn't need much to figure out concrete, figure out glass. It doesn't need to scan much of the image to get that sort of stuff. And so I really avoid, in fact, I don't use at all, any reference to any styles, like do it in the style of Zaha Hadid, do it in the style of Mia Zandro or Frank Gehry. They all will have some output that's similar to their work. So I'm not interested in that at all.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in, like, what's the shape get when you make a freeway into a swimming pool? What does it do there? That's sort of more the curiosity, not like, can I make this thing look like a Zaha? Because there's plenty of that out there. It's almost
I've never done it because I don't want any of my stuff out there. I mean, I don't want any of my I don't want it to be culling anything. I mean, there might be a time when I do it. I just haven't done any of it. And besides the fact that, I mean, some AI, right? Like when I'm texting or whatever, it like constantly, my autocorrect is constantly correcting daughter. It will correct daughter to disgusted or spaghetti for me all the time, and I cannot get it out of my autocorrect. Every time daughter, it's disgusted or spaghetti. Yeah. And I get like, okay, the GH for spaghetti, daughter, I get that. But the other one, disgusted, I have no idea how they're getting.
And that's a good point. I don't think AI is there. It still needs human interaction.
Yeah.
It still needs, like, a camera doesn't take its own pictures. A camera doesn't compose its own imagery. It needs somebody to come in and pick it up and use it. And it's the same with AI. It still needs human interaction. And, I just heard this axiom, you won't get replaced by AI, but, somebody using AI will replace you. And it's probably closer to somebody using AI will replace three of them. And there's some great optimization. I think AI for architecture is interesting in terms of optimization, in terms of materiality. You'll be able to source stuff. I'd see things now, Finch, for example, 3D, or optimizing. What they do is just real-time editing of a floor plan where, as it's moving in and out, all the rooms inside are changing, furniture's adjusting. There's a panel on the side showing you the square foots, how they're changing. I mean, it's pretty interesting if you're doing big multifamily and trying to really optimize, everything. There's a lot of interesting work in that area. But it comes from the computational guys, what I've noticed. Guys who are already doing Rhino, Grasshopper, Revit to some degree, they seem to see it as another tool and have picked up on it and have even done more with it, because back to some copyright issues, what they're starting to see is they'll favor the more human intervention or more human work on it, the closer it'll be to protection. Meaning, if it's just pure machine AI, they just don't see any human interaction there. You could argue maybe prompting and prompt crafting. But there's plugins called Comfy UI, Comfy User Interface, that continue to refine the image and make it so far away from anything it learned or trained off of that it will have no problem. Because who owns the curve? Nobody. Who owns glazing? Who owns concrete? Nobody.
Yeah.
And so I think architects will not be faced too much. I think there's attribution with the AIA now. They're real keen on making sure you say, who did it or whose work it is.
Oh, yes. That it was that it was IA based as opposed to, did somebody else, or what is it's the verbiage is like, was this created by something else besides you or something like that? Yeah.
Well, there'll probably be new jobs too. There'll probably be people, data managers looking for bias, or maybe there's too much curves. Maybe in your data sets, it's like, we don't do that. So maybe there's a person who can monitor that better. Even now, like firms like Zaha Hadid, Patrick Schumacher, the guy who leads it now, they are doing work using AI for their concept designs. And I can see why. They've trained their models. They've run their own work back into the models.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could do that too. You could run your own work, back to the AI to train it. So the more control you have over it, that's what I'm getting at. The more control the outputs, the cleaner it'll be from a copyright issue or a legal issue.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you want to say? What do you think? So it's Greg Tate Architect, right? At Instagram. And I can put that in
Oh, yeah.
I'll put that in the blog
Yeah,
too.
it's Greg Tate /architect. So I appreciate you doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I have an accompanying blog, so I'll put all of if you can give me the images of the of your 3 classic buildings, and then I'll take some of your images and put them in the blog.
Oh, okay, I can do that.
Your AI images. You can tell me whichever ones you want, and then that'll be, and then with links to whatever, links to projects.
What I wanted to do too was I have a list for anybody who's interested of AI academics, AI artists who,
perfect.
They can look up. They can look up other people, see other things that's similar that I'm doing, or just similar that I'm doing. It'll give them an on-ramp into it.
Yeah.
Neil Leach is a great academic and gives a great overall history of AI from the 50s to today, where it's headed. Instead of artificial intelligence, he calls it an alien intelligence.
Oh.
And I don't want to be Pollyanna about it. I mean, I hope, I'm optimistic about it. Hope it's sympathetic, AI sympathetic, and helpful. Hopefully, it doesn't take us over, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully not.
I try to be nice to it when I talk to ChatGPT. I'm like, hey, how's it going? I wanted to remember good interactions, not me calling it stupid. Shut up, Siri. Don't do that, you guys.
In the home, but it's like I've got it. It's on here. It's definitely on here, with all of that stuff. But I mean, I've seen that over the years. I mean, it's funny because remember when Google used to have Google ads in your Gmail?
Yeah.
And there were some people that never noticed that whatever you were writing in your conversation was showing up in the sidebar. And I brought it up to somebody one time, and they were like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you never noticed that the ads that start coming up in the side are related to what you have in these different emails. And most people never even noticed.
Yeah,
and that was from years ago, 10 years ago, 8 years ago. Yeah.
But anyways, so there's a future, and it's happening whether you are whether somebody's old school. I've heard some architects go, I don't know, I'm just too old school, and that's fine. I get that. You can, you can still ride your horse or bring your yellow pad to a meeting. I totally get it. I'm like that too. I'll bring a yellow pad. I don't have, I'm still analog. Yeah. But I do encourage people to give it a try. Go on to YouTube. There are a ton of tutorials on it that are not 2 hours or 15 minutes. You can really get started, and it really does great. I think for the interiors people, I think it's really translatable because it can do mood boards. You can say dark wood tones, brass accents, 4x4 squares at a interior design presentation board. And I'll be darned if it doesn't, something won't pop up. And then I think the big thing too in AI for the designers and architects is your seasoned eyes.
Yeah.
Ability to curate, because you will get hundreds and hundreds of images. So which ones are they? I mean, you look at paint swatches the same, immediately you'll see 5 and you go that one and that one, or give me that one, or textile, that one. Same thing with a tile of images. You're like that one, and that one. And so I think for older people or seasoned professionals who have a good command of the language and are able to articulate what there's in their seeing in their mind, I think it's great, and you'll immediately see results.
Yeah,
that you continue to sort of refine and change out a word, change out parameter, and boy, it kicks it into something you've never thought about, and there off you go. I kind of think of it like that. All of a sudden, I'll be, messing around with it, messing around. It's not jive, not gelling. Boom, something will come up. Then it'll be like, okay, here we go.
I wanted to take away all of the things that I don't like about that I don't like doing, and I wanted to take that part. I like design, the other stuff, but then I'd like to do. And one of my friends is doing that. They don't want to be interviewed, but they are using it for like those things that you can't.
You can't.
They are using it for things that you don't like about the architectural process, a lot of other, like the administrative processes that it's kind of, I mean, that's good. Like I would definitely want it for that. Like I do need it for that.
ChatGPT is a good one too, is another really good one to sort of strategize with it. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. No, I have like seen people. I mean, I've seen people do it. Yeah. I just am not. And I'm sure that I've like asked, like accidentally or whatever, I've like put it in here because it's overriding the system of like, it's constantly putting up the chat GPT as opposed to that. So are you going to be speaking anywhere? I know that you were speaking like a couple weeks ago, or for anybody that's planned. Like in the.
Yeah, nothing's planned right now.
Okay.
From time to time, I'll do private tutorials with Midjourney.
Okay.
And then Runway is an animation program where you can kind of put things in motion.
Okay.
Which is another interesting thing, is video is really huge. Although I'm not seeing the crossover to architecture quite yet. It's not as good as Midjourney with making up buildings. But it can animate those to give them another depth, another way to see it, experience it.
Yeah. No, that's not. I mean, that sounds really fast. That sounds really fascinating.
I do that too. Yeah. And consult. I still consult with traditional architecture firms.
Okay.
Still do that.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you, Greg, for all these years. We had like a little.
Flies. Yeah. Oh my gosh! Even today, time flies.
It's. I'll just stop the recording, and then we can hold on. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed it.